Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Today we're going to discuss why doctors are terrified of herbalists. This is just a general statement. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of physicians and advanced healthcare providers like nurse practitioners and physician's assistants who did not fall into this category. But I want to cover with you, for those of you who are maybe considering adapting alternative treatments into your regime, or maybe considering seeing alternative healthcare providers like naturopaths, chiropractors, herbalists, etc., and are getting pushback from the physicians and from the standard healthcare providers that you're used to seeing. One of the reasons why, in my experience, I encountered pushback from physicians and advanced healthcare providers against incorporating herbal treatments into the regime is that, A, they don't typically understand it. This is not a knock on their intelligence. Clearly, I don't think anybody could say that physicians are stupid or even that they're ignorant, God forbid. And there are a lot of healthcare providers who are doctors, for instance, who do integrate and who are open and receptive towards integrating herbal treatments into their regime. But a lot of this goes back into the schooling and how Western medicine, institutionalized medicine, teaches the next generation of providers. And in schools, many times the focus is on what the books say, and definitely what we know works from a liability coverage standpoint. And that's where a lot of people are operating from, is this perspective of, oh my gosh, I can't incorporate an unknown like an herbal treatment into my care regime because I risk opening myself up to liability. And unfortunately, that's one of the main reasons why a lot of doctors are very much afraid of herbalists and are very hostile in many cases to it, because there is the introduction of that unknown factor into that equation, and unknown and risky things that are not necessarily understood typically tend to be shunned away by this group of individuals. In my experience, actually, working with different physicians and advanced healthcare providers, I've been really blessed when I've had conversations with these physicians about supplementing a patient's treatment regimen with herbal and alternative treatments. A lot of them have actually been very, very receptive. As a matter of fact, like when I start going into the pharmacokinetics of these different herbs and how they work, many times the physicians are very, very receptive to it, especially if you're working, in a place where there's an ongoing learning culture that exists. But you got to understand that if you, as a patient, are utilizing these herbs, a lot of times you're going to get pushback. And one of the best things that you can do is just come in from an educated standpoint. Be like, hey, listen, I've checked this out. Here's a paper. You can come in with the pharmacokinetics. Another great person's perspective to bring into this is a pharmacist. I would submit to you that the pharmacist is one of the most underutilized areas of medical practice that a lot of people just don't consult. The pharmacist understands to the nuance the way that these chemical components within not only pharmaceuticals but also within herbal treatments interact. And they also have great resources, usually in hard copy form, to reference for instance, interaction between them. But another unfortunate reason why a lot of traditional medical practitioners do not like herbal medicines is frankly because they see them as inferior. And I will readily admit that for the longest time, I fell into that bracket. I was very, very skeptical of herbs. As a classically trained nurse, I was used to seeing them as inferior and something that we did in the dark ages, akin to leeching, etc. But when you start to dig into the history of the usage of these different, for instance, herbs like ginger and chamomile and yarrow and valerian, when you start to dig into them a little bit more, you recognize that their action is different than the straight up direct isolated action of these different pharmaceutical drugs. And because it's different, a lot of times people are like, whoa, I don't think so. It's not as targeted. I can't control it as much. And there comes the big word, control. A lot of the medical establishment practitioners, not all of them, again, I emphasize this, but a lot of the medical practitioners who are institutionalized are used to seeing the need to control. And that comes with a very different overall perspective on taking care of a patient. And I first learned this duality of the atomist versus the vitalist, which I'll define my terms here in just a second. I first learned about this under Dr. David Christopher, which is where I received my herbal training from, the School of Natural Healing, which is a great school, very long history of cranking out stellar students. But Dr. David Christopher helped me understand the dichotomy between Western institutionalized atomist mindset versus the holistic approach, the vitalist mentality. And control is central to this difference and to this dichotomy. With an atomist, institutionalized medicine, Western medicine, the atomist sees that whenever a symptom shows up in the body in the form of sickness, that it is an inherent malfunction of the body's processing. When you look in contrast to a vitalist's perspective, the vitalist sees that inflammation, for instance, is the natural defense mechanism of the body. So instead of, for instance, suppressing inflammation, which is what a lot of healthcare providers nowadays would do if they see inflammation, just shove people full of steroids, the vitalist says, hold on a second here. What is happening in the body that is causing this inflammation in the first place? And instead of suppressing this inflammation, let's get to the root cause of this guy and let's support the body in its proper functioning. The vitalist has, and I submit to you, more of an inherent trust of the body's systems versus the atomist, the institutionalized medicine, which sees the body as constantly in a set of chaos whenever it is sick or encountering inflammation, and subsequently presenting us with the need to control it. And so there's a difference in the way of thinking. Now, I would submit to you that Western institutionalized medicine definitely has its place. I'm not poo-pooing the entire thing. I think really where Western institutionalized medicine is very strong is in trauma, clearly trauma, and in emergency surgery, and certainly in neurosurgery in certain applications. However, when it comes to supporting the general health of patients, we're doing an abysmal job here, folks, with Western medicine. And a lot of this, of course, is just an economic situation. When you subsidize something, you get more of it. So when everyone suddenly gets free health care, your patients just blossom and they come in. And now we've got crazy ratios that no person, even if they would spend their entire lives just giving, and sleeping 4 hours a day, you couldn't meet the demand for it because our tax dollars are subsidizing everybody and their brother coming in to receive care, whether or not they really need it. The true price discovery mechanism is not there anymore. And as a consequence to that, you get a whole bunch more patients than you can possibly care for. And really, it's about money at that point. It's about billing people who can be billed so that way we can stay with our head above water and float. Now, a lot of institutionalized medicine, a lot of traditional doctors are hostile to herbal and alternative treatments for a little bit more of a unfortunate reason, and that is that they can't bill for it. And billing and making money off of people is unfortunately a big part of this. I've heard the conversation, so don't tell me it doesn't happen. That this person has sure insurance, therefore we can keep them here longer because their insurance will pay for it, versus someone who doesn't. And okay, we're just going to turn them out. So in many cases, the billability, boy, that's a great noun. The billability is one of the things that keeps patients under our control, and teaching people herbal medicine and teaching people adjunct therapies and self-sufficiency doesn't help the bottom line. And that's an unfortunate part of it. Have herbal treatments and remedies not worked for somebody where Western medicine has? Sure, for sure. Definitely when you're looking at structural issues, there may be an issue where we have to surgically go and intervene with things, but not all the time. And I'm sure that I'll hear people say, herbs have killed people, or herbs have done this, that, or the other. How many hospital-acquired infections have killed people as a result of needless surgeries? How many needless surgeries have killed people? How much medical malpractice has killed people? So it's not like one is this white, pure, above reproach institution, while the other is just like down in the dust, they're keeping people in the dark ages. That's not the thing. But these are some of the factors that have traditionally caused enmity between the herbal and vitalist side of the house versus the atomist and the institutionalized medicine side of the house. And those are some of the factors why ultimately doctors are really terrified of herbalists. So there's a lot of mix in there, and no one set of parameters applies to every single situation. But I just want you guys to be aware of this as patients going and seeking a healthcare provider's opinion. That's one of the things that you may have to factor in when you're having these conversations is there an inherent animosity, or is there just a lack of familiarity, or is there concern about liability? And in many cases, it may be all of them or more. So those are some of the things I wanted to share with you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what you've experienced. If you've ever had to try and explain to your healthcare provider, hey, I use ginger for this, or hey, I use oat straw for this, or tell me what you've experienced. And also, if you are a healthcare provider, tell me what your opinions are in the box below, because I'd like people to be able to see where the true dispersion is of opinions across the gambit. I hope it was helpful for y'all today. If you did enjoy the video, I hope you'll subscribe. Make sure you click the little notification button too, because a lot of people are telling me they're not getting my stuff, so that's a way that you can remedy it. Also, you can support me on Patreon and Subscribestar, as well as cryptocurrency, and I have links for those in the description box below. I'll put some recommended resources as well. The School of Natural Healing by Dr. Christopher, I'll put that link in the description box below, and also a couple other books that'll help y'all on your journey. Hope it was helpful for y'all. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.